I wanted to talk to you today about IMAGINiT Clarity and tell you about what the product is, how it works, and give you a sense of how you can improve your projects, particularly your BIM 360 based projects, using what IMAGINiT Clarity offers to you. As we look back at the history of IMAGINiT Clarity, which goes back to 2011, we look back and we see that we wanted to make BIM coordinators and Revit users' lives in general better by looking at all of the manual repetitive tasks that we can take off of your plate and just handle for you, so that you can focus on the real meaningful design work that needs to be done and not spend your time on repetitive manual grunt work. IMAGINiT Clarity is now 10 years old or 9 years old, and it has expanded really in two separate areas over the last 7 or 8 years. We've been really focused on automation as well as insights, and we're going to talk about both and see a little demonstration of both sides of the product. So on the task automation side, actually, before I get too deep into this, let me start by saying that that Clarity fundamentally is an on-premise product. It's an intranet-based product. It is not a cloud-based product. So you actually install Clarity on a server inside your office, and we do that historically because a large percentage of the projects that were out there were on your local file system in a particular office, and we wanted to start by supporting those first and foremost. Now, these days with BIM 360 being all the rage, we also support BIM 360 and a bunch of other mechanisms, but everything is still today installed on premise and run on your own servers. So from a task automation perspective, the idea is that you can tell Clarity how particular tasks need to be done on a particular project. So whether it's PDF or DWG or Navisworks or anything like that, you can say, this is how we do it. This is the standard. And anyone can come to the Clarity intranet web page, click a button, say we need new PDF progress sets, and that work that needs to be done is then sent out to be batch automated on one or more machines that you designate to do that work all in the background. So the person who's requesting doesn't need to know Revit, doesn't need to start Revit, doesn't occupy their machine while it cranks out 100 sheet sets. All that work happens in the background. And we like to say that if we've saved you some time by you saying, I need a new PDF progress set, that if that would normally have taken you, 20 minutes or 25 minutes out of your day to go load up the model, put out the PDF progress set, print it, and then deliver it to where it needs to go, we've kind of saved you that block of 25 minutes, or maybe it's an hour, or it depends on the size of your project. But we started in 2015 keeping track of how many bits of time have we saved people. And it might just be 1 minute there or 20 minutes there, but over time across all of our customers, it has added up to over 1 million hours, and it averages out to about 284 hours per project on an annualized basis. So your bits of time that we can give back to you really adds up. So again, the fundamental of Clarity is that you set up on your on-premise intranet site where your models live for a particular project. And that can be a network folder, that can be a Revit server, it can be BIM 360. We even work with Bentley ProjectWise if you store your Revit models in there. And then Clarity will take those models, will watch them, will be able to schedule tasks or launch tasks and hand that work off to, as I said, one or more machines that you designate to do that Revit work. And we can even now hand off work to Autodesk Forge, which will do that work for you in the cloud, and you don't need to have any or as many of these on-premise task machines. And we think that's an area that will continue to grow over time. But then ultimately, once the work is done and we've produced files, whether that's a PDF file or a Navisworks file or anything else, we also take it to the next step where that file needs to be delivered to some location, and whether that's another network folder or pushing it up to BIM 360 or pushing it to SharePoint or Dropbox or BIM Track, any number of places where we can handle the delivery of the files to where they ultimately need to get to. So the kinds of tasks, keep sort of rattling off tasks that we do. These tasks fall into a bunch of different categories, ranging from export and print-oriented tasks, your PDF, your Revit to AutoCAD, COBie, IFC, Navisworks, exporting schedules out to Excel, all those kinds of things that we can take off of your plate and just have the machine do it for you. It's kind of like a robotic, intern. We've got tasks that are related to data and standards, like getting data out of Revit and into a project database, or checking standards with either the Autodesk Model Checker tool, or if you use the Autodesk Revit Model Review tool. We support both of those to automate the checking process overnight. We do a lot with Revit health checks. So how can we analyze your model and figure out how people are using it? Are people following best practices, or are they falling into bad habits? And then we still do a lot, even in the age of BIM 360, we still do a lot with what we call model exchange and management. If you need to periodically pull a copy of a Revit model and clean it up, audit, simplify, and deliver it out to some partner that's maybe not using BIM 360, or if you've got partners that are not using BIM 360 and they're sending you their Revit model, but you'd like to bring that Revit model in and deposit it into your project, fixing up all the links, all those kinds of things, we can do both directions. We can help automate both directions of exchange. Specifically around BIM 360, we do a lot with uploading and replacing of models, doing an off-site backup of the BIM 360 data, or maybe it's an on-site backup. So normally the data is up in the cloud, but if you'd like to make sure that you have all the latest versions of your in-progress, work-in-progress BIM 360 data, we can automate downloading and making local copies on your network of that. We can trigger publishing. We can help you migrate data between hubs and projects. So if you want to pull data from one project and push it to another, we've got that. And then various things to help with the model coordination process. So if you want to take your live model and automate the process of publishing it, copying it, getting it into the model coordination folder and being fully up to date, just automatically in the middle of the night. We have, again, for projects not using BIM 360, we have some of our own change tracking technology. So if you wanted to take a snapshot and see what changed since the last version of a partner's model that you got a week ago, you can get a definitive look at what changed. We have, again, some of our own viewing technology. And we've got some sort of core IT management tasks, like I said, project backups, automating model upgrades and family upgrades, that kind of thing. We also do a lot with just file synchronization. If you've got files that need to get moved from BIM 360 into ProjectWise, or ProjectWise into BIM 360 because you're using backgrounds that are from a partner that uses ProjectWise, or the other systems, SharePoint, Box, Dropbox, OneDrive. You can just set up ongoing synchronization that Clarity will handle for you. We do some things with harvesting content out. And then the last one that I'll just mention is custom tasks. If there's something that we don't have that you'd like to automate, we have a lot of ways for you to plug in something that's custom for you into the Clarity environment so that you can leverage the Clarity platform, whether that's scheduling it to run on 1,000 different models, or run this on my project every night, or whatever it might be. You can take your Dynamo task or your Revit macro or your .NET add-in, and you can say, plug this into Clarity and make it something that I can schedule and something that I can automate automatically. And specifically on the Dynamo task, I know everybody loves Dynamo these days. So we've got both sort of a simple Dynamo integration where you just point at your script and point at what files need to be run through that script. But then we've also got a more dynamic Dynamo integration where we will help you configure inputs and that kind of thing to your Dynamo script. We've got tools to automate running families through Dynamo. And then we've got some of our own Dynamo nodes out there for integrating your own model health metrics or retrieving model health metrics so that you can update maybe a starting view or something like that with your model health data. So let's switch over and let's take a look at this Clarity product that I keep talking about. So here is our Clarity product. This is one of our servers that's inside the company, and every project that you set up inside of Clarity gets its own little page. You can add projects and just tell us where the model lives for this project on your network, or go to BIM 360 and pick the hub and project that this works with. But once you've set this up, Clarity will start monitoring. These are the Revit files that we're going to focus on in this particular project, and we can set up the tasks that we'd like to have run on this project. So whether that's PDFs or doing the model health metrics or that kind of thing. If I go in and edit the task, we'll see that we have the ability to go in and pick which models inside this project this task is appropriate for. We have control over what work sets that we're going to open during the process. For things like PDF, we've got options for what sheet sets we're going to print, or we can even do something dynamic, like saying this appears in the sheet list, and this has a sheet number that contains A. So we can do dynamic sort of sheet set generation, and all the different options of how to combine or create separate views for each sheet, building up based on sheet name and sheet number and those kinds of things. All the different options that people have asked us for over time, including the whole page setups and that kind of thing. So so that's how the PDF sort of task looks. But as I mentioned, you can kick this off either on demand, or you can schedule it to say, let's just make PDFs every day during the week at 2 in the morning. Let's fire up Revit and make me a new set of PDFs, but maybe only if the model's changed since the last time that I've done the task. So we can be smart about not spending too much time keeping your PDFs up to date, but you can just set it and forget it. So once we set these things up, we can kick them off. I just hit update and run. So I now have 4 tasks in my task queue, and in the back room, one of our machines that has Revit on it will be opening up the right version of Revit, opening up these models detached if possible, and producing the PDFs and then delivering them to wherever they need to go at the end of the day. So that's really the fundamental idea behind the Clarity task automation engine, and that's the engine that powers a wide variety of the features inside of Clarity. Our model health and model metrics features are also driven by this, so you can go in and set up any of these kinds of tasks and pick and choose how they're going to run within your environment. So let's switch back over to the PowerPoint for a moment, and let's talk about another aspect of Clarity, which is the insights side of things. We, with our various tasks that we are running, can collect about 60 different model health metrics across all the things that you might care about in Revit. We'll take a look at change tracking. We'll take a look at web-based schedules and room and equipment data sheets, that kind of thing. On the model health side of things, we capture a lot of different things. Revit warnings is kind of a fundamental measurement of how good or how bad your Revit model might be. We track all of the different metrics and give you different dashboards, way of looking at how this metric has changed over time. And then there's a separate set of metrics that we offer called the Autodesk Performance Advisor criteria. Yeah, so we track all of the metrics. We have all the data from all the models over the lifetime of when you've been tracking. So we can take a look at any of those metrics and see how they've changed over time. We can see, even just on something as basic as model size, looking back and seeing how it's changed over time gives you insight in how much a particular team is doing sort of model maintenance. The model size rarely goes down unless you're doing that kind of audit and purge and compact kind of operation. And so you can see at a glance what that might do and what that might mean. We can look across projects. So once you've gotten a bunch of projects into Clarity and you've run metrics against it, you can start looking at different metrics and saying, what's typical for my company? And so looking at this particular metric, you can kind of see, well, okay, there's a bunch that are down in this area, and so that's sort of typical. And we also have a mechanism for you to say, for the metrics that you really care about, if you want to draw the line and say, this level is perfectly acceptable, this red side is perfectly unacceptable, and in the middle, it should be an area of concern. So green, yellow, red, and you can draw that line, and having this look across your projects helps you understand where to draw that line. Users can see the project metrics inside of the Clarity project. They can go in and see of the models in the project, which ones have issues and what kind of issues do they have, as well as looking at the data over time. And BIM coordinators who might be responsible for model health across a bunch of projects can get a quick view of across projects and see which projects have issues, and within each project, which models have issues. So different ways of looking at that data. And then beyond that, both with model health data as well as other kinds of data, Clarity harvests all this and stores this in a SQL server on your premise. And so you have the ability to plug into that data using other tools, whether that's Tableau or Microsoft Power BI or even Excel. You can get at that data and build your own dashboards if you're interested in that. This is one of our customers who built this dashboard using a mix of Clarity data and their own data from Dynamo. So other insights. Let's talk for a moment about the project data that we can extract. So we have the ability inside of Clarity to, we create a new Microsoft SQL Server project database for every project that you set up. And the task automation engine is going to take all the Revit models that you care about and export all of their data into that single location. And that gives us some capabilities to be able to look at that data on the web inside of Clarity. So we can extract out web-based schedules, and that's more than just the data, but even getting into some graphical representations, key plans and thematic maps and the locations of equipment within a particular level. And we can also generate room and equipment data sheets just automatically based on the data that you have inside of Revit already. It's all customizable. It's all an HTML template where you have an editor where you can build up what you want your data sheet to look like, but the data is automatically kept up to date every time that you run the export task. And that's a sample of a customer's data sheet for a project in Mexico where they needed to have both English and Spanish parameter values and generated that way. So we also have the ability to look across your projects for data. So as you start producing more data, we have mechanisms to be able to say what was our typical operating room square footage or size or usage over our last 5 healthcare projects. Any different kinds of data that you extract, we have mechanisms to build cross-project queries to be able to leverage that data, or to be able to get that data into a tool like a Microsoft Power BI so that you can easily slice and dice that data. We're even particularly excited about a new feature, which is an even simpler integration with Microsoft Power BI and Excel, where you don't need to deal with SQL databases and that kind of thing. There's no permissions. It's just a live URL that we give you, and you can just plug that in, and very quickly you're up and running and able to use that data inside of the Power BI environment. So let's take a look at some of these data side things. So looking at the project again, we have things like reports where we can go in and look at room schedules. We can work with the data inside of here and show it to me by department, export it so that I can work on it in Excel, show me a diagram, and let me highlight it by department, or highlight it by by floor finish, or whatever it might be. So yeah, there's a lot that you can do with reports, and it can get down into deep into data, even down to the level of where are particular pieces of equipment within the level. So for example, if you wanted to see fire rating of doors across a particular level, we have that. We also have access to things that it's hard to get to in Revit sometimes. We track, for example, revision info. And if you'd like to know for a given Revit revision what sheet that revision applies to, or a cloud appears on, we have that because we've built our database to be able to make that easily available to you. It's a little bit harder to get out of Revit. So that's really the report side of things. We do have a mechanism that if you did want to make changes to the data that you're looking at here, if you wanted to let a non-Revit user make changes here in the grid, we have the ability to let them do that, and to send those changes, push those changes back into Revit via a mechanism where the Revit user gets notified that there's a requested change, and they can review the change that you've specified and accept or reject that requested change that was put in on the website. On the data sheet side of things, as mentioned, we have all different kinds of room data sheets and different ways that you can show the data. This is all, every room in the project gets a room data sheet with automatically generated layouts, or you can tell us which view in your Revit model you'd like to have represented here, and we'll go in and extract out the rooms from a particular annotated view. But we've got data about the room, we've got a key plan that's automatically generated and hyperlinked, and we've got, if I go back to this one that's got a little bit more equipment, we've got doors, equipment, furniture, all of these kinds of data all built in, and the data is all cross-linked. If I go click on show me the stacking chair, here's the furniture data sheet about the stacking chair. So what it is, if you had any parameters filled in, and where in the model this particular chair is used. So that's the data sheet side of things. On the metrics side of things, we, as I mentioned, we keep track of the metrics for every model and what the current state of it is, what the issues are, and looking at that data over time. We track model activity. So if you are using our Clarity Client add-in for Revit, we can tell you at the end of the project how much modeling time was spent on each of the Revit models. As I mentioned, we have some of our own viewing technology if you're not using BIM 360. So that's the sort of quick version of the look at a particular project. We'll go over to the metrics side of things, and we can go in and say, I might be responsible for these projects, and so as a BIM coordinator, I've got a view of which projects have issues. We have the ability to go in and even assign a numeric score for each of these metrics to be able to say, how important is this? So we can tell that this model's an 88, for example. But we have all of this data, and we can look at the data over time and how it's changed. We track things like out of all the 60-some metrics that we capture, which are the ones that you care about most? How would you like to assign what's an acceptable amount? And how many points would you give it in a scoring system? So lots of things that we can do here, including getting sort of deeper into warnings, so that we can say which of the warnings that are out there, you might, think are meaningful for your company, and which ones are sort of less meaningful, lines being slightly off axis or something like that. We also have the ability to set up alerts on metrics so that you can just be proactively notified when a metric crosses a threshold via email. So that's really the main pieces. I think I was going to show briefly the new feature with being able to integrate the data into Power BI. We can go in and say, give me the external reporting link for this, and then inside of Power BI, we can say, get me the data into my Power BI. So I'm going to go advanced and like that, and in just a matter of moments, it's pulling that data in, and you can pick and choose what tables you would like to have inside of your Power BI environment. There we are. Okay. So we can look at our rooms table. We can look at model metrics, whatever data that you would like to see inside of Power BI. And it's just a matter of hitting refresh anytime that you want to refresh that data. It'll pull the latest data into Power BI. And you can tie it in. We have different tools to leverage out custom maps and that kind of thing. So you can tie in space by department or that kind of stuff, all inside of the Power BI environment. You can look at metric data. You can build things around rooms or spaces. All of that data, all available inside of Power BI, and really easily. No tricky SQL access to. You just take the URL and go and run with it. So I'm going to take it back to here. Just as an overview, when we talk about Clarity, there are a few different pieces of it. There is the core piece of Clarity, and I mentioned task machines that effectively do your work. These, we call them task servers. They're not necessarily servers. They can just be workstations, but sort of the core piece of Clarity, and then the task servers that do the work. And then we do have a couple of modules today for Clarity. If you work with Bentley ProjectWise and you want to integrate it, that's a module. And then we have a module inside of Clarity that's specifically for if you're a building owner rather than an AEC firm. It mostly just changes sort of the terminology that's used of building versus project, but it does have some integration with other systems like Archibus for facilities management and that kind of thing.